African woman hired to care for Arab executive's sick daughter. What they discovered shocked everyone. The job was simple, or so she thought. A humble African woman, newly arrived in Dubai, was hired by one of the richest Arab executives in the Middle East to care for his terminally ill daughter, a child doctors had already given up on. No one expected anything extraordinary. She was just the nanny, invisible, replaceable, hired to clean, cook, and sit quietly in the shadows. But what unfolded behind those palace doors stunned everyone. Because what they uncovered wasn't just a hidden illness, but a truth that would rip open the past, shake a billion-dollar legacy, and forever bond two souls from opposite worlds. It's a story of healing, secrets, and the power of love, where no one thought it could grow. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss one of our inspiring and emotional stories that will move your heart and leave you speechless. Amina stepped off the bus with nothing but a plastic bag in one hand and a faded photo of her son in the other. The Dubai heat wrapped around her like a warning. She was far from the dusty streets of Abidjan, where she'd scrubbed floors in silence for years, invisible to the world. But this was her chance, her first job abroad. And it wasn't just any job. The agency had said the man was powerful, important, untouchable. Mr. Zade Al-Fayed, one of the most respected Arab executives in the Gulf, CEO of a massive real estate empire, private helicopters, custom Italian suits. He didn't hire help, his people did. And yet, for some reason, he had personally requested the new nursemaid himself. That made no sense. Amina wasn't trained in medicine. She wasn't glamorous. She didn't speak perfect English. What she was, painfully, was honest, gentle, calm. The kind of woman people ignored unless they needed something cleaned. Still, she clutched the job contract in her shaking hands, walked through the white marble gates, and stood before a door that looked like it belonged to a royal palace. The door opened before she knocked. A tall, thin man in a black suit looked her up and down like a customs officer inspecting worn luggage. "You're early," he said without warmth. "Follow me." The house was silent inside. Too silent, as if something had stolen the air. He led her past gold staircases and indoor fountains until they reached a wing she would soon learn no one else entered. "This is her room," the man said, stopping in front of a heavy wooden door. "The doctor comes once a week. You'll feed her, clean her, keep her company. That is all." Amina nodded. "Yes, sir." He didn't smile. "You are not here to ask questions." And with that, he left her there, alone in the hallway, hand trembling over the doorknob. Inside, the room was dim. The curtains were drawn. Machines beeped softly. And lying on the bed, too still, too quiet, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6. She had an oxygen tube in her nose and an IV in her arm. Her skin was pale, her cheeks sunken, but her eyes, when they opened, were wide and brown and filled with something Amina hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Amina stepped closer. "Hello," she whispered. "I'm Amina. I'm here to take care of you." The girl didn't respond. She turned her face toward the wall. A single tear rolled onto the pillow. Amina didn't try again. She just pulled the chair beside the bed and sat. And for hours she said nothing. She didn't sing. She didn't touch. She simply stayed. By nightfall, the girl looked at her again. No words, just a look. And that's when Amina noticed something odd. Not medical, not physical, but something in the girl's features, her skin tone, her jawline, something that echoed in Amina's memory like a shadow she couldn't name. She reached into her plastic bag and pulled out the photo. Her son. Kofi. Age 3 in the picture, now gone 10 years. She looked back at the girl. Couldn't be. No. It was impossible. And yet, the feeling gripped her chest like ice. She didn't sleep that night, because something wasn't right in that house. Something deeper than illness. And she wasn't sure if she was here to take care of the girl, or to uncover a truth someone had tried very hard to bury. The next morning, the silence in the Al-Fayed residence was even heavier. Amina woke before dawn, as she always did, and moved through the house like a ghost. No one had told her where the kitchen was, so she wandered until she found it. A sleek, stainless steel room that looked more like a showroom than a place where anyone cooked. She found oatmeal and warm water, prepared it simply, added a little honey, and carried the small bowl down the long corridor to the girl's room. The child was awake, staring at the ceiling, still not speaking, still watching Amina with that same wide, wary gaze. Amina sat beside the bed and placed the bowl down. "You don't have to eat," she whispered. "But I made it the way my son liked it. When he was little, he had trouble keeping food down too." The girl blinked, but didn't move. Amina reached into her pocket and pulled out the photo again. She didn't show it, just held it gently in her hand. "His name was Kofi. He had a laugh like music. I lost him many years ago, to sickness, no money, no doctors, just me and God." Something flickered in the girl's eyes. Amina smiled softly. "What's your name?" It took a full minute, but then, barely audible, came a whisper. "Yasmina." Amina's breath caught. "Yasmina," she repeated. "That's a beautiful name." The girl looked down at the bowl. Then, slowly, she reached out and took the spoon. Amina didn't speak again. She just sat in silence as Yasmina took 3 small bites, then laid back, exhausted but calm. A miracle, the doctors would later say. But it wasn't medicine. It was presence. It was softness. It was something this house had forgotten how to give. At noon, Yasmina was called to the study. She was led there by the same cold man in the black suit. Inside, the air smelled of oud and polished wood. Zade al-Fayed stood by the window, looking out at his sprawling estate. He didn't turn when she entered. "You got her to eat," he said. "Yes, sir. She hasn't done that in days." Yasmina didn't answer. He turned finally, his sharp features betraying little emotion. He was tall, proud, with graying temples and dark, intelligent eyes. But there was something hollow in him, something heavy beneath the tailored suit. "She spoke to you?" "Yes, sir. She told me her name." He narrowed his eyes. "You didn't ask anything else?" "I'm here to care for her, sir, not interrogate her." There was a pause. Then, unexpectedly, Zade gave a faint nod of approval. "Good," he said. "We've had 3 nurses before you. All failed. You're different." Yasmina lowered her gaze. "I've known pain, sir. Sometimes that's what children feel safest with." Zade studied her for a long moment. "I'll increase your pay." "I didn't ask for more," she replied quietly. He almost smiled. Almost. Nevertheless. That evening, after he left the room, Yasmina lingered in the study. A framed photo on the shelf caught her attention. It was Zade, much younger, beside a woman with long curly hair and deep brown skin. Not Arab. Not local. She looked closer. The woman in the photo was African, and her eyes, her smile. Amina's hands trembled, because she recognized that woman, not personally, but by resemblance. It was the same face she saw in her own mirror, the same high cheekbones, the same jawline she saw in her sister's. Her mother. This wasn't just any nanny job. This wasn't just any child. She rushed back to Yasmina's room, heart pounding. The little girl looked up at her, eyes tired. Yasmina whispered, "Your mother. Where is she?" Yasmina looked away. "Gone," she said softly. "They said she left." Amina's blood ran cold, and suddenly the question she hadn't dared ask before flooded her mind like a scream. Who was this child? Really? Yasmina barely slept that night. Her thoughts churned, tangled with memories and questions she didn't know how to ask. She stared at the ceiling, the fan above clicking softly as it spun, and the image of the woman in the photograph burned in her mind. She couldn't shake the resemblance. The woman beside Zade al-Fayed, the one smiling in that old photo, looked like she could be from her own village. The same skin tone, the same eyes. And Yasmina, that child didn't look like the other al-Fayed relatives Yasmina had seen in magazines or news articles. She looked like her, but that didn't make sense. Zade was royalty in this world, powerful, respected. A man like that wouldn't have married a woman from a poor village in West Africa. Would he? And if he had, where was she now? The next morning, Amina returned to Yasmina's room with quiet footsteps and a heart full of questions. The little girl sat upright for the first time, her thin back against the pillows, a storybook in her lap. She looked brighter today, stronger. "Good morning, little one," Amina said gently, pouring warm water into a glass and placing it beside the bed. Yasmina looked up and smiled, the first real smile Amina had seen from her. "Morning," she whispered. Amina sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a curl from the girl's forehead. "Do you miss your mama?" Yasmina's eyes clouded immediately. She looked down at the book in her lap. "I don't remember her," she said. "Daddy says she got sick and had to go away." Amina nodded slowly. "Do you ever see pictures of her?" "No," Yasmina said. "He hides them." Amina's chest tightened. She wanted to ask more, needed to, but she couldn't risk pushing too hard. Not yet. That afternoon, while Yasmina napped, Amina slipped quietly back into the study. The house was silent. Even the man in the black suit was nowhere to be seen. She found the photo again. This time she picked it up, holding it close. The woman had a name engraved in gold beneath the frame. "To Zade. Yours always, Sira." Sira. Amina's knees weakened. She knew that name. Not well, not intimately, but she remembered hearing it whispered during late-night market gossip back home in Abidjan. Years ago, there had been stories, rumors really, about a beautiful young girl from the neighborhood who had disappeared after meeting a foreign businessman in Ivory Coast. Some said she had gone to France. Others said she died. No one ever knew for sure. But the name stuck. Sira. Amina took the photo with her, hidden under her apron. That night, in the privacy of the tiny servant's room, she studied it again, tracing the woman's face with her finger. She could no longer deny it. Yasmina's mother had been African, and no one was talking about it. Not the media, not the family, not even Zade himself. It made sense now, the way the staff avoided Yasmina. The whispers, the locked doors, the shame that hung in the air like perfume too strong to ignore. They were hiding her identity, her roots, her truth. Amina stared at the wall, pulse racing. She had known cruelty. She had known grief. But this felt different. This was silence designed to erase someone, to pretend they never existed. And now the child left behind was paying the price. That night, Amina sat by Yasmina's bed and held her hand. "I think your mama was brave," she said softly. "And I think you are too." Yasmina's eyes fluttered open. "Do you know her?" Amina hesitated. "No," she said. "But I think I will soon." because Yasmina had made a decision. She wasn't just here to clean sheets and warm food. She was here for truth, even if it meant confronting the most powerful man in the city. Zade al-Fayed didn't expect to find her there, standing in the middle of the grand foyer, clutching the photograph she wasn't supposed to have. The early morning light filtered through the tall arched windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The house was still, too still. And in that silence, Yasmina looked up at him like she wasn't afraid. "I need to talk to you," she said firmly. Zade stopped in his tracks. He had just returned from a private meeting, still in his tailored gray suit, phone in one hand, his signature fragrance lingering in the air. His eyes narrowed. "That photo? Where did you get it?" "You know where," Yasmina replied. "It was hidden, like everything else about her." Zade's expression tightened. He said nothing. "I know her name," Yasmina continued, holding the frame between them. "Sira. She was African, like me, and your daughter, she is half of her." "Put that down," he said, his voice low, controlled. Yasmina didn't move. "Why are you hiding her, Zade?" she asked, her voice trembling now, but still standing tall. "Why did you let your own child grow up in the shadows, as if half of her doesn't matter?" Zade turned away, exhaling sharply. "You don't understand the world I live in," he said. "You don't understand the weight of a name here, of legacy. My daughter is sick. She already carries that burden. I won't let her carry more." Yasmina stepped closer. "So you erased her mother?" He turned sharply. "Her mother left. She couldn't handle this life. She wasn't ready. And she didn't die from sickness, Yasmina. She died giving birth." The words dropped like stones. Amina's heart ached. Then why not tell her the truth? Why keep her memory locked away like a shameful secret? Zade looked at the ground. "She was never meant to be part of this world," he said quietly. "When I brought Sira here, I thought I could build something different. But everything turned on us. The board, the family, the press. She was bullied, silenced, and then gone. I lost everything I loved in one day." Amina's voice softened. "But Yasmina is still here. She deserves to know who her mother was." Zade's silence was answer enough. Yasmina placed the photograph gently on the ornate table beside them. "You may be the most powerful man in this city, Zade. But power means nothing if it's built on silence." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the marble hall, his reflection fractured in the polished floor beneath him. That evening, he did not come down for dinner. Yasmina stayed with Yasmina, reading to her softly. The girl leaned against her, warm and calm, her small hand curled into Yasmina's scarf. "Do you think my mommy looked like you?" she whispered. Amina's throat tightened. I think she was even more beautiful. Do you think she would have loved me? Amina closed her eyes, holding back tears. She did love you, with all her heart. The next morning, something changed. Zade called for Amina. She entered the study cautiously. He sat behind his massive desk, papers scattered, his tie loosened. He looked tired, vulnerable. I've arranged for a box to be brought from storage, he said. It has letters, photos, jewelry, things that belonged to Sira. I never threw them away. I just couldn't look at them. Amina's eyes widened. She deserves to see it, Zade added. And maybe I deserve to see it too. She nodded, her voice steady. She needs her mother back, even if only in memory. Zade looked up at her, the edge in his voice gone. You've changed things here, Amina. I didn't come here to change things, she replied gently. I came here to care, and that's all Yasmina ever needed. For the first time since her arrival, Zade smiled. It was faint, wounded, but real. And in that small moment, a door opened. Not one made of wood or gold, but one made of truth. The wooden box was smaller than expected. Carried into the room by one of Zade's assistants, it looked more like something meant for a jewelry case than a lifeline to the past. But Amina knew, even before it was opened, that it carried more weight than anything that ever sat inside the Al-Fayed family vault. Zade stood by the door, unmoving. He didn't speak as the box was placed on the table. His hands were buried in his pockets, shoulders tense beneath his tailored suit. There were no executives here now, no boardrooms or titles, only a man, and the pain he had buried for years. Yasmina sat up in her bed, her oxygen tube carefully adjusted by Amina. Her eyes darted between her father and the box. What's that? She asked. Zade cleared his throat. Something that belonged to your mother. Yasmina looked at Amina, unsure. Amina offered her a warm nod. Would you like to see? Yasmina hesitated, then nodded slowly. Amina opened the box. The scent of aged cedar and dried rose petals drifted into the air. Inside lay a folded scarf, soft, delicate, patterned in deep reds and gold. Beneath it, a stack of photographs, yellowed at the corners, and a bundle of worn letters tied together with a faded ribbon. Yasmina's small hands reached for the scarf. She pressed it to her face and closed her eyes. It smells like someone, she whispered. That was hers, Zade said quietly. She wore it every Friday. Yasmina picked up a photo. Amina stepped behind her, leaning in to look. It was Sira, radiant, laughing, holding a baby in her arms. Is that me? Yasmina asked. Zade stepped forward, slower now, and knelt beside the bed. He took the photo gently from her hand and stared at it for a long time. That was the day you were born, he said, She made me promise we would raise you with love, no matter what the world thought. Did you love her? Yasmina asked. Zade blinked. He hadn't been asked that in over a decade. I did, he said, more than I ever told anyone. Yasmina looked back at the box. Why did no one talk about her? Zade looked away, ashamed. Because I thought forgetting her would protect you. But it didn't, she said, her voice almost a whisper. He nodded, tears threatening. I know. Amina watched quietly, her heart full. That night, after the nurses left and the house grew quiet again, Yasmina asked Amina to stay. Will you read me one of the letters? She asked. Amina opened one carefully, unfolding the paper that had been touched by hands long gone. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. She began to read aloud. My dearest Yasmina, if this world ever forgets me, I hope you never do. You were born of two worlds, my love, one of power and one of spirit. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You are both. You are everything. By the time she finished, Yasmina was crying. Not because of sadness, but because, for the first time in her life, she felt her mother. She knew her voice, her truth. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was real. And in that moment, something shifted in the little girl. A light sparked behind her eyes, and the weariness that had weighed her down for so long seemed to lift, just a little. Do you think she would be proud of me? Yasmina asked. Amina reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. She already was. Zade stood silently at the door, listening. He didn't say a word, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man running from grief. He felt like a father, learning how to begin again. The days that followed felt different. Sunlight, once a stranger in the Al-Fayed mansion, began pouring through the windows again. Yasmina requested the curtains be opened. She wanted to feel the warmth. She asked for music, soft, old songs in French and Arabic. And, for the first time in months, she laughed. Not constantly, not freely. But it was there. Small bursts of joy like light flickering through storm clouds. Zade noticed. He came home earlier each day, sitting by Yasmina's bedside while she told him stories from the letters Amina read aloud. They laughed together about the time Sira had tried to cook lentils and nearly burned the kitchen down. They cried when Sira wrote about the loneliness she felt, being invisible in a house that once adored her. Zade didn't deny it anymore. He let the memories in, and he let Amina in too. They began to speak, not just about Yasmina, but about life, about grief, about forgiveness. One evening, they sat on the balcony, watching the sky turn gold. You remind me of her, Zade said quietly. Amina didn't answer right away. Because I'm African? She asked gently, without offense. No, he said. Because you don't flinch in the face of silence. You fill it with meaning. Amina looked out across the gardens. She was never meant to disappear, Zade, and neither was Yasmina's truth. Zade nodded slowly. I know, and I intend to make it right. But not everyone agreed. That same week, word began to spread. It started small, whispers among his business circle, questions at board meetings, a headline buried deep in a finance blog. Rumors of illegitimate heir surface around Gulf mogul, Zade al-Fayed. And then came the call from his cousin, Khalid. You're making a mistake, Khalid said coldly. This woman you hired, she's stirring up things that were meant to stay buried. Zade stood in his office, staring out the window. Truth isn't a mistake, he replied. The board doesn't care about your truth, Khalid snapped. They care about the company, the shareholders, your image. You think I don't know that? Then act like it. Khalid's voice dropped lower. If this gets worse, if the press starts connecting dots, they'll demand blood. You know how these things work. It won't just be you who pays. It'll be her. The child. Zade's blood froze, and then came the last sentence. Send the African woman away, quietly, before everything burns. He hung up. That night, Zade didn't speak much at dinner. His face was unreadable. Yasmina didn't notice, too busy showing Amina how she could now walk halfway across her room without assistance. But Amina noticed. He was pulling back. Later, when she passed by his office, she found the door half open. He sat alone, the photograph of Sira in his hand. His other hand trembled, not from weakness, but from rage. You're thinking of sending me away, Amina said quietly. Zade didn't turn. Everything they warned me would happen is happening, he said. I thought I could control it, protect her, honor her mother. But now... You're afraid, Amina said. Not for yourself, for her. He finally turned, meeting her eyes. They will come for her, and for you. I can't stop the machine once it starts turning. Amina stepped forward, steady. Then don't hide again. Stand in front of it, like a father, like a man who finally has something to live for. Zade stood. I don't want to lose her. Then don't, she whispered. But if you try to erase me, Zade, she'll know, she'll feel it, and that will break her. They stood in silence. In the end, Zade didn't ask her to leave. Instead, the next morning, he called a press conference. No press releases. No PR spin. Just him, standing at the gates of his own empire, and beside him, a girl, his daughter, and a woman who refused to be silenced. The cameras caught everything. Zade al-Fayed stood silently, holding his daughter's hand at the gates of his estate. Amina stood beside them. No makeup, no uniform, just presence. He didn't read a statement. He simply looked at Yasmina, then at the crowd and said, "This is my daughter. She is Sira's daughter. And today, she will not be hidden." Silence followed. Then one question, then dozens. But Zade didn't answer. He turned to Yasmina, smiled, and together they walked back through the golden doors, not as a secret, but as a family. If this story moved you, remember, truth may shake the ground, but it plants roots where love can grow. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this with someone who still believes in courage.